I really am very enthusiastic to be here. And I'm not like the speakers in our context before going to talk to you about Africa, where I have been to some of the places that look like hell and feel like hell. I'm not going to talk to you about Haiti, where I recently came from, where the people are not only experiencing helplessness, but also hopelessness. I'm going to talk to you about America. I'm going to talk to you about poverty in this country, which is the highest it's been since the last 15 years. And I'm going to talk to you about the children in the United States who are the greatest victims of poverty here. As you know, or maybe not, it is, I think, a very compelling statistic. 1 out of 7 Americans are considered poor in this country. And the poverty is defined as $22,500 for a family of 4. That means that we have people in this country, 19% of whom live in poor families. I'm sorry, children live in, 19% of children in this country live in poor families. While there are 35 million children in the United States, 25%, while children are 25% of the population in the United States, they are 35% of the poor children. And to compound that are issues of race and location. So 35% of black children live in poor families, 31% of Latino children live in poor families, 14% of Asian children, and 11% of white children. And as far as rural areas are concerned, it's 22% of children living in rural areas are poor, 26% in urban areas, and 11% in suburban areas. One of the main theories in trying to turn around poverty is the notion that if you give a person a fish, you're not solving their problem. If you give them a fishing pole, however, you're giving them the skills for long-term development. There is, however, something essential and truly profound about giving children product that can help them in the developmental process. You can't survive in school if you're cold. You can't get to school if you don't have shoes. And people will ask me, really? Children in the United States don't have shoes? Well, if you go to inner LA, if you go to the foothills of West Virginia, if you go to Miami, you will find that kids don't have shoes. And so one of the things that is critical in the process of building children's future is to ensure in any aspect of poverty, whether it's homelessness, whether it's incarceration, whether it is among military families in this country, whether it is among children living on Indian reservations, they need shoes, they need clothes, they need books. And these resources may not be the intervention per se, but they are the tools that can help in the process of intervening. Let me tell you about one family in particular, the Prado family. Hunts Point District in Bronx, New York, is the poorest district in the United States. The Prado family who we visited, they're one of 15 people living in a one-bedroom apartment. They have 6 children. They have been unemployed for over 2 years. When we spoke to the family, Inez, the mother, said, "All I can give my children is love. Unfortunately, I can't give them more. But if you give them gloves and hats and a warm coat, they can go to school." And in that respect, you're providing them with the tools that allow them to be functional and the tools that allow them to participate with other children. But the important thing is, and something I'd like to underscore is, the product has to be new. Children cannot receive secondhand hand-me-downs that make them feel that they are not valued, that make them feel that they are second-class citizens. There are many faces of homeless in the United States these days, and they continue to grow. And many more people are joining those who are transient every day of their life, who go from shelter to shelter, who go from cot to mat, and from place to place. It is interesting to know that every day 842,000 Americans are homeless, and importantly, 1.3 million children experience homelessness every day. We did a study in Houston with the Coalition of Homeless Shelters, and we learned that among the families that we spoke to, 83% say that they need clothes more than anything else, that they need clothes above food stamps, that they need clothes above housing vouchers, but they need clothes in order to be able to manage their lives. Another very large part of the poor population in this country are people who have come from abused families. Every year in the United States, it's estimated that 1.3 million women are domestically abused. And that is compounded by poverty. Women who live in poverty tend to be victims of domestic abuse more than any other women. What happens in a family of this sort, needless to say, is that children are exposed to conditions that prevent them from developing well, from developing functionally, from being able to participate with others. One of the things we have found is that if play is an critically important process of building the skills and the emotional development of children who come from abusive families. And so if you give them toys, they're able to interact with others, they're able to develop slow motor skills, they're able to develop a number of different functioning skills that can make a difference for them. But they don't have new toys, and they have to receive them from others. Incarcerated. I'm sure you know that incarcerated individuals tend to come from poor families. We have found that incarcerated teenagers, in particular, young men, are the ones who, when they're trying to get out of a situation that is so difficult for them, that where they do want to, in fact, redevelop themselves, where they do and we do want to reduce recidivism, that having clothes, new proper clothes, to go to court appearances and for job interviews can make them feel that they're more valued, can make them feel that there's a life beyond the prison walls, can make them feel that, in fact, they are able to compete again in the world outside. One of the largest areas of poverty, and I've lived on Indian reservations, are among our Native Americans. I think you know that poor people, poor children, have a 40% higher rate of illiteracy. Among the Native American population in this country, illiteracy goes up to around 30%, and it is devastating. One of the things that we found, again, going around the entire country, in every part of the United States where there are reservations, is that children, in fact, who have a book of their own tend, in fact, to read better or to be able to learn to read better than if they don't. To have that book in their hand, and I have seen it, to know it's their own, to know that they are able to use it and read from it and read to others with it, makes a difference in terms of their feeling of self-confidence, esteem, and the interest and motivation to read. And so we have seen that this, in fact, is an immeasurable contribution to children who, either in Indian reservations or in military families, can use this resource. Let me tell you about our military population. It is hard to believe, when you go to military bases, the amount of poverty that exists. A family who enters the military gets $32,000 a year for any number of children in that family. And it takes years to move through the ranks. And not only are these families dealing with the stress of a loved one being away, worrying about the future of that person overseas, but these families really, really struggle economically. And another thing that is so critical about that struggle is that children tend to have their academic achievement decline during the absence of a parent being overseas. We've also found that if you give these kids books, and we've created a program called Books on Basis, Smiles on Faces. If you give them books, they tend to be interested in reading. There's the mother over there who you can see with her children, who told us about her little girl who, when she had a book of her own, it really made a difference in terms of her motivation, her interest, and in terms of her achievement outcomes. One more aspect that I'd like to tell you about in our military is that there are more than 1.8 spouses and 5 million children who face stress from active duty deployment of a parent. One of the things that we've seen very interestingly is the increase or the higher propensity of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, on military bases because children tend to sleep with their parents. And the point that I'd like to make is that if you give them a new crib that they can't buy, if you give them a pacifier, a small thing such as a pacifier, it makes a difference in the child's ability to live past this stressful period that they are engaging in through life and through the fact that they have a parent away. Finally, we know that the lowest monthly income, families with lowest monthly income, tend to have the lowest composite score on wellness. But if you want to encourage exercise and you want kids to feel that they can get out there, they can go and run, they can go on the treadmills or whatever exists, they can even play basketball, they need to have the sneakers to be able to do that, the athletic footwear that they don't have, that they can't afford, and that they have no access to. The bottom line that I'd like to share with you is that there is a lot of unused inventory in the United States. Yes, production processes, consolidation of business, overseas production has meant that there's far less. But you can hear stories in New York where the largest retailers are throwing bags of unused clothes out in the street and the homeless are literally groveling through those plastic bags. You can hear about educational publishers or just general publishers who will discard, literally discard books that are excess inventory. Just think what those books could do, what those clothes could do for the people I'm describing to you who really, really simply don't have it. So the message that I'd like to convey and the action that I'd like to have people consider is it is important that there be a movement, that there be at least a statement, a platform to businesses in the United States that they must redirect their excess inventory to those people who otherwise would not have it. Because if a child who lives in poverty, and I've seen them all across from the west to the east coast, if a child lives in poverty, having a new pair of clothes, having shoes, having books, having educational materials, even a DVD, can make a difference between surviving and actually thriving. Thank you.